Hi there and welcome to this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. A major announcement and victory for residents of Grassy Narrows. The province has committed $85 million for the cleanup of the mercury contamination at Grassy Narrows First Nation north of Kenora. The contamination of the English and Wabigoon River systems in the 1960s and 70s from the pulp and paper mill in Dryden have been the cause of many health issues for residents of the First Nation. The announcement came late Tuesday afternoon from Environment Minister Glenn Murray. Murray says the money will go towards the design and implementation of the cleanup. Grassy Narrows Chief Simon Forrester says it's a dream come true for his community. Forrester says several initiatives will be undertaken as part of the process, including locating and neutralizing hotspots of contamination along the river system and addressing the contamination from the mill.
The plan is to put in a water filtration system, at the dump site to remove, any mercury residue that's coming out from the site. That's part of the plan.
Forrester hopes the cleanup will begin by spring or summer and believes it could take up to 10 years to complete. Dozens of First Nations people are slowly making their way across northwestern Ontario on a 300-kilometer journey. They're traveling from Long Lac to Thunder Bay on a healing journey, a 7-day-long walk to raise awareness on a wide range of issues affecting our Indigenous population. Colton Prale has more.
Since Sunday, the Healing Walk for all First Nations and communities has been on the move. Already, they've completed their 191-kilometer journey from Ganoogaming First Nation to the intersection of Highway 11 and Highway 17, but there's still a ways to go. The walk, hosted by Long Lake 58 First Nation, is an effort to bring attention to the many issues faced by First Nations people across the region. Already they've walked for addiction, cancer, the missing and murdered Indigenous men and women, as well as the survivors of residential schools.
Today we're walking for suicides in our communities. Tomorrow we'll be walking on land, water, and air, and the last day we're going to be walking on racism. So each day there's a particular message that we're conveying, that we're carrying. It's all about healing in terms of the issues that we've had to contend with and live with as First Nations people.
For the walkers, these issues aren't abstract concepts. It's their reality, their history. It's personal.
When I was 16 years old, my best friend died of suicide. It was his second attempt, and he was successful on the second try. So that's why I'm doing this today.
For me, I'm a personal survivor of the residential school system. I left home when I was 8 years old and never got back until I was 20 years old. And yesterday was very emotional for me, but I really enjoyed it.
The walkers cover an average of 40 to 50 kilometers a day. The walk will end on Canada Day here at Mount McKay, 322 kilometers from where it first began. Colton Prale, TBT News.
Chiefs with the Anishinaabe Nation will hold an emergency summit this week to discuss their options for high school education for their students. This comes amid concerns from some parents about safety of their children here in Thunder Bay. NAN Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler says some students may not return to Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School this year. The recent deaths of Tammy Kiash and Josiah Begg have raised concerns about safety for young Aboriginals here in Thunder Bay.
Many of the families have said that they will not be sending their students back to Thunder Bay in the fall. And if that happens, they need to be accommodated elsewhere, right? They should not be denied their right to an education, and they should not be forced to send their children back to Thunder Bay. So that's one issue that will be raised by the Chiefs on July 5 and 6.
The summit comes 1 year after an inquest jury delivered recommendations following the deaths of 7 First Nations students in the city between 2000 and 2011. One key recommendation was a student living center. Now that proposal has been at a standstill for the past 5 years due to a lack of funding. Fiddler says the Chiefs need to show some progress in that living center, and they also need to provide assurance to the parents whose children do attend DFC in the fall. More details on the summit will be released in the coming days. A boost from the federal government this week for the town of Schreiber. Employment Minister Patty Hajdu has announced a $270,000 FedNor grant that will allow Schreiber to hire an economic development officer for a 3-year period. That person will be tasked with implementing the town's recently completed community revitalization program. The aim is to undertake local economic development projects that will create jobs help sustain growth and prosperity in Scarborough. Canada's Health Minister Jane Philpott has announced a commitment of $8 million for a new Indigenous mentorship network for medical researchers. The Cabinet Minister was in Thunder Bay Wednesday to attend a workshop on Indigenous youth suicide where she made the big announcement. Xiaoli Li was there.
It's an $8 million investment into Canada's Indigenous people. At a Northern Ontario School of Medicine workshop on Wednesday, Federal Health Minister Jane Philpott unveiled a new plan to connect Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit students in medical research with mentors in the field.
This is in recognition of the fact that it's part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action for supporting the building of the capacity in health and health professionals as it relates to Indigenous peoples.
Philpott says the program, which is now open, is being led by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. NOSM Dean Roger Strasser says mentors were invaluable during his youth, and having a guide through the academic world was crucial.
I think is a major step forward, and with new funding she announced today, that will really assist Indigenous people, whether they're medical students, whether they're students in other disciplines at university, graduate students, masters and PhD students, to have the support and the guidance of experienced Indigenous researchers.
Minister Philpott also met local Indigenous youth and medical students who say the mentorship network is something that's badly needed.
It's something that we actually spoke about coming into first year, and how we required so much guidance and direction into helping us to formulate our thoughts and our goals and aspirations.
The program plans to place 8 teams of mentor researchers across Canada. However, CIHR, which is leading the project, says locations for those teams have not been finalized yet. Xiaoli Li, TBT News.
Following in the footsteps in the neighboring municipality of Marathon, Terrace Bay is pursuing its own supportive housing complex for seniors. On Monday, Terrace Bay Council signed a memorandum of understanding with CGV Builders, the same company tasked with construction of Marathon's supportive housing complex. Like Marathon, there isn't much in the way of assisted living in the community. Currently, residents only have the option of services provided at the Wilkes Terrace Long-Term Care Facility in McCausland Hospital. According to Terrace Bay's CAO Jonathan Hall, this new facility would be designed for those who can't live on their own.
So we've engaged this company, CGV, and they have a pretty good boilerplate plan, if you will. It's going to vary slightly, obviously, from Marathon, given the needs of each community. In the end, it would be a very similar model of operation to Marathon. We would probably partner with the hospital, and we'd probably be looking to the District Social Services Administration Board to also have them involved at some point as well.
Hall adds the agreement is still in the very early stages, but says there will be public consultations to further develop the design of the complex. Well, coming up after the break, a Northern First Nation gets a surprise visit from the Thunder Bay Border Cats. For over a century, baseball has been played across Canada, but even in its lengthy history, there are still children in the far north who have never had a chance to play the game. However, the Thunder Bay Border Cats are out to change that and made a trip to the North Caribou Lake First Nation last weekend. Colton Prail has the story.
500 kilometers away, in the remote flying community of North Caribou Lake First Nation, the Border Cats are something unknown. By all standards, the idea of baseball itself is something unfamiliar. For many of the kids there, it was their first time playing.
Awesome.
What did it feel like?
I don't know, it feels amazing when you hit for the first time.
In this community of 700, the sport of summer was simply something out of a storybook. But this book came to life, and it brought its heroes with it. 10 players and 2 coaches spent their first morning off this season boarding a plane to play baseball with the children of North Caribou Lake First Nation.
The favorite one I like using the bat.
Why is that?
It's easy for me, but throwing the ball is not very much.
Really nice, because they came all this way to help us to play baseball and stuff.
For Jean-François Garon, it was one trip he couldn't afford to stay on the sidelines for. The normally impossible to miss 6'3" center fielder blended in amongst the kids, constantly bending down, teaching them how to hold the bat, how to throw, and how to catch.
For me, the most part, it's just important to give back. I think I personally fell in love with the game because other people did it with me. So I'm just trying to be a role model and, it's baseball, it's fun, so I'm just trying to have fun with the kids.
The trip is part of a new community outreach program by the Border Cats. According to General Manager Dan Grant, the team wants to be an ambassador for baseball in the community and across the region.
I kind of treat all of Northern Ontario as just one big community. I know a lot of kids from the northern communities come to Thunder Bay to live. And I think it's part of our job to be somewhat of a welcoming committee.
But growing the game didn't stop there. The team, along with the mining company Goldcore, donated boxes full of balls, gloves, baseball caps, bases, and helmets for the kids to use after they left. For many of the players here, the opportunity to come up to communities like these and share the sport they love is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But for the kids, the hope is that this is just the first of many baseball experiences they'll have. Colton Prail, TBT News.
Dryden is looking for some help from the federal government to become the sports hub of northwestern Ontario. And city officials are hoping it comes in the form of a brand new $80 million sports complex. The current Dryden Memorial Arena is almost 40 years old and in need of an upgrade for a complete rebuild. According to Mayor Greg Wilson, the community has several high-quality sports-based attractions, but where those facilities shine, the arena does not. In the past, the community has held many tournaments for Northern First Nation and Williams feels if Dryden is to stand out against other communities and attract more events, this is the venture to follow. He says they will need to work with other groups to convince the federal government to provide the money for a new pool.
If we partner with First Nations in lobbying the federal government to give us financial support to create a facility that will help bring people from all over northwestern Ontario to Dryden, then we will win, and I think northern communities will win. But we have to have a complex that's big enough that can handle our own community clubs as well as these outside tournaments.
Wilson says one of the campaign platforms of the Trudeau government during the last election was spending money on infrastructure, and he doesn't think asking for less than $100 million is unreasonable. The ranks of Dryden Police Service have expanded to include a special constable for animal control and bylaw enforcement duties, which means pet owners in the community could face fines if they're found in violation of the rules. Fines could include $105 for allowing your animal to run at large, as well as a $20 per day impound fee, and failing to license your dog or failure to display the dog tag could cost pet owners $150. Well, after 7 years of waiting, it's paid off for a small First Nation east of Nipigon. Lake Helen First Nation, home to the Red Rock Indian Band, applied for an additional to reserve in 2010. The move would see land where the Chalet Lodge is currently located and is part of the township of Nipigon. Transferred to the federal government, it would then in turn become reserve lands. The application was passed by the Privy Council and community received word of the completion of the deal on National Aboriginal Day. According to Councillor Sean Ruth, the additional land will allow for the community to grow both physically and economically.
It's actually pretty huge for the community. Right now our reserve stands at about 130 acres or so, so this extra almost 25 acres is pretty significant for the First Nation and the community in the whole. Opportunities are endless. Ultimately it's up to the community. Chief and Council can make a recommendation to see what to go forward with, but if the community sees something else, then might be pushing on that.
Ruth says some of the options available for the land is to open up a fishing and hunting lodge, a restaurant, or to create a cultural center and training hub. Well, coming up next, the Friends of White Otter Castle are looking for help from the province to protect the century-old structure. White Otter Castle near Ignace is a mecca for tourists visiting the region. However, time has taken its toll on the 102-year-old structure, and now a group of area residents are asking for support from the province to preserve the building for future generations. Adam Riley was there and files this report.
Tucked away in a remote area of the Northwest along the shores of White Otter Lake stands a testament to one man's persistence and ingenuity, White Otter Castle. Built in 1915 by Jimmy McQuat and accessible only by plane or boat, the building is a must-see for tourists in the region. McQuat, who constructed the building by himself, only enjoyed the fruits of his labor for a short time as he drowned in the lake 3 years later and is buried a few meters from his castle. But with the passage of time, weather, and visitors leaving their mark on the castle, the structure requires significant work to repair the damage that has been done. Vice President of the Friends of White Otter Castle, Don Marion, says they received $1.2 million 23 years ago to restore the building, but says there were restrictions on what they could and could not do.
Well, the castle is in need of maintenance. Actually, in '94, when we were done working on the castle, there wasn't a proper preservative put on the building. Part of the stipulation back then was we do everything to original building standards that was used by Jimmy, and so the trinking was all done with mortar that we had mixed up ourselves from sand from across on the beach over here.
Marion says since then the new logs used have shrunk, allowing water to seep in and damage the castle. which is why the Friends of White Otter Castle flew Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP Bill Morrow in to see the castle and request funding from the province. They're looking to have the government provide $400,000 over the course of the next 20 years to help maintain the structure. Morrow says he is open to the request, adding the plan presented to him is a reasonable one.
In my mind, over 20 years, it's not what I would call a significant amount of money, given this is over 20 years. So we're going to take this back. We're going to see what we can do through our ministries provincially. Maybe there's some federal opportunities for help as well. I don't know. Can't speak for them. But we're going to look to see what we can do to help this group who's so well-intentioned to maintain this incredible part of Northern Ontario's history.
As Morrow toured the castle, a group of canoeists from Texas were passing through. The group's leader, Nick Burkheimer, calls the experience powerful and thought-provoking.
What's so incredible about this is that this is it's a simple testament to human ingenuity. Jimmy built this entire castle by himself, by hand, through sheer determination and want to not die in a shack. And that's just an incredible thing, like to bring up these young kids and show them, if you set your mind to something, this is what you can do. It changes their whole perspective on life.
Jackie Smick says she and the Friends of White Otter Castle are determined to preserve the building, even if the funding request is turned down.
When you're sitting there at the side of the lake, just meditating, it's just so magical. I can't think of any other word to describe it. It's my favorite place in the world.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
A two-vehicle collision on Highway 17 at Clearwater Bay west of Kenora has left a 31-year-old male from Montreal dead. The incident occurred shortly after 7:30 Monday morning and forced the closure of the highway for several hours as emergency crews transported several people to hospital. The cause of the collision is still under investigation by the OPP. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is asking the public to help them reduce the number of injuries caused while riding all-terrain vehicles. The health unit says every year there are around 150 emergency department visits due to an ATV injury in the Thunder Bay District. In 2015, half of those injuries involved persons between the age of 10 and 29, and the injury rate for this area is 2 times higher than the rest of Ontario. As a result, the health unit is asking area residents to remember to always wear an approved helmet and other safety gear and never carry a passenger on a single rider ATV. They also suggest getting trained before you ride and supervise riders under 16 years old. And of course, never ride while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Well, summer is here, and with that, the black bears have fully woken up and are searching for food. That can lead to incidents with human-bear interactions, but the township of Terrace Bay is looking at ways to keep those incidents at a minimum. Last year, a mother and her 2 cubs made their way into a restaurant in the community. Unfortunately, this mother was destroyed and the cubs were orphaned. Mayor Jody Davis says over the years, the bears have become more and more of a problem for communities all over the region. And after forming a bear committee and establishing bylaws, he says they've been unable to get back some live traps.
We're trying to work with the MNRF on getting back some bear traps that they removed from Terrace Bay several years ago. And for some reason, which I don't understand, they're having a hard time releasing them back to Terrace Bay. We've hired a person that was willing to, a local person, to operate the bear traps and be trained on how to operate the bear traps. So we're ready to go. We're just waiting for the MNR to release those bear traps back to us.
Davis says if the community had the traps, they could catch bears getting too close to town before it's too late. Well, Thunder Bay's 2 federal MPs went back to school Tuesday. St. Pius X Elementary School received a visit from Minister Patty Hajdu and the Grand Chief Fernand, with the children voicing their concerns about safe water drinking. And MP Don Rusnak paid a visit to St. Francis School and presented a challenge to the students. Molly Fromer has more.
The grade 5-6 students at St. Pius School prepared a presentation on the quality of drinking water in northern communities. The students stood in front of their class, as well as MP Patty Hajdu and Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler, to discuss their thoughts on safe drinking water.
And the fundamental human right that everybody should have, and everybody does have, to clean drinking water.
Hajdu says she appreciated seeing the students highlight the need for more investments in water infrastructure for First Nation communities, but also in skills and training, which Hajdu's ministry is responsible for.
It's exciting because we've had a number of proposals recently about ensuring that Indigenous people are trained on water treatment plants and water in particular. Well, I'm going to do exactly what they asked, which is deliver them to the Prime Minister. We've already actually just sent out a tweet telling the Prime Minister about the event this morning, and I have an opportunity to see him later this summer, so I'll be personally hand delivering them to his office.
We have a very bright future. If we're going to be led by kids like this later on, that I think we all have something very good to look forward to. So I was really, again, impressed with their work and their words, and we will convey that to our leadership later on this summer.
Meanwhile, over at St. Francis School, Thunder Bay Rainy River MP Don Resnack followed up on a challenge he presented to the students. From March 15th to May 15th, they were encouraged to read as many books as they could within the time period. And not just any books. Part of Resnack's challenge was to get the students to read as many Canadian books as possible. And they did exactly that. 50 students read a total of 641 books. The top 4 students who read the most books each got a present from Resnack as congratulations. He spoke about the objective behind it.
Just to get kids involved in Canada 150 events and celebrations and pride in Canadian authors, and what better way than reading Canadian books. And I think reading's extremely healthy, extremely good for them, and that's one of the drivers behind why we chose to offer a reading challenge.
Resnack wants the students to continue to read over the summer to improve their skills and challenge themselves. Molly Fromer, TBT News.
And that'll do it for this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.